The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Give us a find on Twitter at Schmidt_radio. At Herbal Essence. Can always catch us along the Hail Varsity Radio Network, wherever you can hear us across the state, and YouTube, of course, with the Hail Varsity Radio YouTube channel and Hail Varsity Radio Twitter at HVarsity Radio. We'll get to our starting five. They get that signified and saluted. Appreciate all you checking us out in the stream and on the airwaves. Busy weekend. A look-see Saturday night. We'll have some thoughts to share on that. Jay Moore going to be with us, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, and Charlie McBride in hour two. Tim Verghese with Inside Nebraska Rivals. So recruiting update, some thoughts on camp for Nebraska as they're into their second week camp, their first full week. So a lot to get into. The number to get in is 489-1240, 489-1240, or 800-825-5865. Elijah, how was the weekend? You and I both spent time on the golf course. We had an enjoyable time in that aspect. You got a chance to watch Bud stay perfect Saturday night. How was the shindig? Was it pretty good?
It was good. Small. I know you had an invite. You invited yourself on Friday during our show, and you didn't even show up, so I'm not sure what's up with that.
I gave you a call. We connected. I didn't just ghost you.
You know, that's true. That's true. The fight was also stupid late. It was annoyingly late.
Well, it sounds like there was
a mishap with gloves behind the scenes, and now they're
on top of that, you had too many musical performances.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. The fight started way late.
The way Twitter was griping, it was, let's go, ring the bell. And then it wasn't that super dynamic of a fight. I mean, Bud won in decision.
I enjoyed it.
Was it good?
I'll say that. It was not, if you were coming to expect...
Crawford fight I've missed, really.
Yeah, and if you were expecting a Crawford fight like the past couple years where he kind of starts out slow and locks things in and then just absolutely starts wailing on a dude, that was not the kind of fight you got. It was calculated. Bud had to be a little bit more patient. Both fighters had to be patient with as well as they were timing up things. So just a bit more of a patient fight. I don't think it was... had any lack of entertainment value from that sense. I understand if you're more of a casual boxing fan and if you're not getting guys getting knocked to the canvas, you're probably not as happy. We didn't have much of that, but it was still a very technical fight, fun to watch. I enjoyed it. We'll see where Bud goes next. Sunday morning, hit a quick par 3 9 holes, golfed all right, and then more importantly, Schmitty, on Sunday afternoon I became a champion.
You won.
My rec league softball team took it home. We lost game 1, 10-0. We got run ruled. It was a little bit dicey, you know. But
how many teammates were hung over? I'm asking for the 10-0 beatdown.
I'm not quite sure. I didn't go around and ask questions. We just weren't hitting the ball like we know we could. I think maybe we had that thought in the back pocket of like, we got game 2 coming up, so we maybe just threw in the towel a bit early. I don't know. It's rare to see a team not put up any runs in slow pitch softball, especially a team that's good enough to get to the championship. So that was a little bit dicey, but then we got the doubleheader. We got the second chance at him because we were the winners out of our bracket, and it's a double elimination tournament. We took them down 4-3 in the second game, a tense game, a tight game. But we took it home. Got myself a Rec League Champions shirt that I'll be wearing proudly at some point this week, I'm sure.
Do that. You got to rock that tomorrow.
It's a good-looking shirt.
We are up at Indian Creek Thursday and Friday this week for the Pinnacle Bank Championship. Excited about that. We're on the road Thursday and Friday up in Omaha. So what an event. Just incredible. Excited for that. Let's get our starting 5 shout-outs going. Justin is in. Justin first. Black Hills Brennan is in, claiming gold just by a nose. We shall see on the photo finish, but appreciate both of you getting in.
Was his torso across first?
I don't know. I don't know. Mr. Erickson in third. The other Dave says, hello, fellow Skurs. Husker Steve checks in. Arlo is in. Uncle Jimmy is here. Mud Flaps. Once more practice updates. We shall deliver, Mud Flaps. Good to have you. Furball there. Tiger Shark Diver is in. Coach Brandon is here. Weston. Also Nicholas is here. Nicholas, good to have you in. A-Dub and Tim. Mr. Snitley. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. There needs to be some peace in Boulder, it sounds like. Afternoon, fellas. Let's hope we can keep injuries to a minimum in fall camp. Sounds like a few guys already nicked up. Keona, Tiger Sharks here. Cliff is in. Cliff, good to have you. Still down in the land of Wilbur at check days. Jack is here. Dylan, good to have you. As he checks in, Michael is here. Zach is in Cancun. 1-2-3 Cancun, screams the early 2000 or late 90s Lakers. Zach. Sal is in. Anthony is here. Husker Geek says hi there. Eric says howdy. We'll have a few more folks pop in. We'll give you shout-outs, comments, thoughts, concerns, questions. Bring it on with the Hail Varsity YouTube channel or 489-1240. We'll take a Ask Charlie question if you want to talk and ask Coach McBride a question in less than an hour. Fire those up. We're excited to do that. Let's get to Saturday night, Elijah, and you and I weren't present there. That's okay. We'll relay what's been seen and heard. And yay at quarterback, okay, with Dylan. Dylan looked the part, made some nice throws. It's clear that the wide receiver room is plentiful with options and talent, with Bonner and Nayor and Banks, your three guys in that perceived really early first-team look. The Corcoran at left tackle was a bit intriguing, but good for Turner. Teddy was with the second team. That's what really stuck out. Emmett and Ramir, your 1-2 punch with a little bit of Gabe also in the running back room. And you got some newbies out on that Husker corner island with some load management there for Tommy Hill. So you saw a couple of guys play at quarter, Charles being one that got a chance, which you like. And pretty impressive for Nebraska. And really impressive for you, the Nebraska fans that came out as part of the NIL fundraiser to make some money for football and other programs. $3,500, $75 a pop. I teed off at 4:30, and it was 98 degrees. I owe Uncle Mark a Volkswagen. He beat me by 12 strokes, but we melted. We melted out there, and I know the west side of the stadium was shaded, but you still packed in there. You still sweated out with your football team, so tip of the cap to you, the Husker faithful that came out 3,500 plus strong for a Saturday night practice under the lights. Rule wasn't messing around. I didn't like his team's movement, so they got to do some running. Coaches participated in that, and I think what's really cool, maybe it's just a subtle thing, but even though Dylan's squad wasn't the team that had to run extra, he was running with the defense. Mm-hmm. So that's a nice I'll be there with you through thick and thin type gesture.
And that was one of the things I said when this was first announced in terms of what type of on-the-field insight are we going to get? Maybe a little bit. And I think that's what we got, a little bit of on-field insight. There was no new revelations coming out of this practice, but we did get a peek behind the curtain, which is what I said. What does the Matt Rule coaching style look like? What does the culture look like within this team? I think we got a peek with that. With you talk about the running at practice because the guys aren't hustling enough. Reminds me of one of my favorite movies, Heavyweights. You've seen it?
Yeah.
Lunch today has been canceled due to a lack of hustle. That's a classic. But you get the guys out running because Matt Rule didn't like the intensity, didn't like them not running between stations. You got your likely starting quarterback in Raiola, which is maybe a little piece of insight. That's not a revelation, but he did appear to be head and shoulders above the rest. He's out there showing that leadership, running with the guys, even though he wasn't one of the guys that needed to be out there running. That was the peek behind the curtain we got, is what does it actually look like whenever these coaches that we spend a lot of time talking about, what do they actually look like when they're on the field, whenever you don't have the cameras in there and you get the little bit of a toned down media session. Every fall camp practice counts, and you got a chance to see these coaches out working whenever it really does count, whenever it's not just a 20-minute peek behind the scenes that the media gets whenever everybody knows the media is watching, let's button it up, let's keep it in check. You don't have a chance to do that with the fans, and maybe a little bit of it, but there's only so many practices, so you got to see a peek behind that curtain. I think that was what's interesting. That's kind of the more important revelations we're getting today, because there wasn't anything earth-shattering that we saw.
No, Sal chimes in. Dylan looked like a kid who was poised and focused. Special for sure, GBR, and that's what you want come August 31st and beyond. You want a guy that knows what he's getting into. There's really no surprises. It was a conscious choice to come here. And, we'll get into a little bit, why Nebraska will be better. We're not ready to go ink with our predictions. We'll probably save that till the Monday before game week with our season predictions. But you're going to be better at spots that you have to be better at. Can you go execute and make some plays and take care of the football? It really sounds simple, but you got a guy that is built pretty good to be a difference maker when he needs to be a difference maker. And you've got plenty of help. And I go back to that help on the defensive side of the ball. I go back to that help with experience in the defensive line. I go back to that help in the receiver room. I mean, if they want to throw it to be a threat to throw it, you've got a lot of guys that can separate and make some plays.
And let's go to the phone lines because Paul in Lincoln's been waiting. He's got a thought on the Husker wide receiver room.
Paul, thanks for calling, man. Go for it. Paul, do we have you?
Ooh, we may have lost Paul.
Paul called back, 489-1240. That hurts.
Yeah, he had a thought on the Husker wide receiver. We'll see if he calls back. I can bring it up in his stead if we don't get him back on the line.
No worries. But, Paul, thank you for tuning in and giving us a shout. But so Saturday night practice, pretty good.
I do want to get back into one of the things you said with Corcoran working at left tackle. Yeah. That's a piece of insight. The two actual on-field pieces of insight I'm taking away, one, Corcoran working at the left tackle spot with what appears to be the first team as it stands. Also, the first two running backs that are working with the first team appear to be Emmett Johnson and Ramir Johnson in the backfield. Those are like the two pieces of insight I thought were somewhat interesting. Obviously, a lot of time between now and UTEP where things can change. But one of the things I've said a lot about Turner Corcoran is I want to see him with a year of an off season of knowing, hey, you're going to be playing here this season. You're not going to be thrust around. It's not a case of you're playing tackle in camp and then when the first game rolls around because of injuries, you get moved to guard or vice versa. That's been kind of the story of his Husker career. He has to be able to find a landing spot. I've been curious to see what it would look like if you do find just one role for him. He can play there all year long. And I think we got our insight on Saturday because you didn't have Henry Lutovsky practicing. He's going to be out for the next, sounds like 2 to 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. You had Justin Evans-Jenkins and slide over to left guard, Mazuka playing on the right, and you had Corcoran who remained at the left tackle spot, which I thought was an interesting and a positive piece of news that Corcoran, despite an injury to the guard spot, did not get thrust back inside to be working at guard, continues to work at left tackle. I'm excited to see what type of jump he can make from last year to this year. You saw it with Ben Hart, the kind of huge jump he's able to make under Raiola with a new strength and conditioning program. What's Corcoran able to do? Understanding you're going to be a left tackle this year. We have options at guard if we have a couple injuries there, but for now you're going to be our left tackle. I'm curious to see what type of development that makes, what type of strides he's made, because he's clearly made an impression enough that this early in fall camp he's taken the reps with the ones.
Special teams is something to get into a little bit because while we talk about why you think Nebraska will be better, clearly, quarterback, there's a lot of things that go into it. Your defense, your conscious choice by a number of seniors to return that want to go out the right way if you're a Nebraska football player, and that's well above 500 with a bowl berth, right? Stuff you grew up watching that you took for granted, and especially if you're a local product, I think a gift for sure. and you want to leave it the right way and move forward to some sustainability as a program that's not on the rise, but that is well positioned to stick around that top 25 and knock on the playoff door at some point. So the special teams, the return part of things will be key for Nebraska, assuming the defense lives up to its billing, where you're getting some 3-and-outs and you're getting favorable field position with some sort of punt return. Get yourself a first down on the catch and return. Start out with a 60 or 65-yard field, not an 80-yard field or 75 yards to go, and do it that way. Secondly, with Buscemi, though, didn't sound like he had a great night kicking it. You've got Elvano that's on the mend a little bit. You've got a couple of other kicker options. You are chasing 3, Elijah, and 3 points comes down to, can you pin somebody if you do have to kick late in the ball game? Can you go be automatic 40 and in, kicking the field goal if a drive stalls, or you just want to milk the clock and have your own walk-off versus knowing that feeling of 3 walk-offs at the buzzer last season. So special teams, something absolutely to keep an eye on. What type of progress can that unit make? But you feel good at quarterback, O-line, wideout, and your defense with what you got coming back, and you got a chance to see it on Saturday night. What'd Tim Verghese think inside Nebraska rivals? What's the latest on the recruiting chase for some blue-chip prospects? We'll find out. Tim Verghese on the way. Coach McBride. Next hour, Jay Moore with us as well. Good to have you on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Always get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Hail Varsity Radio. Give us a rating, good, bad, or ugly. YouTube, where you can watch the show as well, Hail Varsity YouTube. Tim Verghese in on camera. As Tim locked in, as always, with us on Mondays with Rivals.com. Inside Nebraska, follow Tim for all recruiting and Big Red updates at Tim Verghese. Tim, how we doing? How was the weekend?
Not too bad, not too bad. Made a little trip around Nebraska this weekend, but had a pretty good weekend.
That is awesome.
Where around Nebraska did you make it out to?
Did we get to a diner or a cafe?
We went to Aurora. Girlfriend stays out in Aurora, so went out to go meet the fam, I guess.
Nice.
And went to a little Mexican spot out there, and pretty good.
So we've been meaning to make the small town bars tour, Schmidt and myself.
Selfishly,
I think for about 3 years now, we've been trying to go hit a different small town bar once a week through the summertime, make the summertime go a little faster.
Part of the golf outing.
We've never quite followed through on it, but I think it's an interesting idea. Yeah,
I think it's an incredible idea.
Summer, the three of us.
Oh
yes, done. No, the Zuspins are from Aurora, and Tom Haas, also a quarterback from Aurora, way back in the day. Got to check your Citrus Bowl footage from 100 years ago. But he came in and sparked the Big Red in the Citrus Bowl. Didn't end well for Nebraska that day against the co-national champs, but old Tommy Haas from Aurora. So I like that town. Driven by it a lot. Never been in. Well, I mean, just heading out west with my grandparents.
I like that town. I've never been there, but I've seen it.
But I like the folks that have come from Aurora. Is what I'm saying. You had footage up on Inside Nebraska, and I know you've viewed it. But any takeaways, Tim, just from the weekend? A chance to see behind the old velvet rope with Nebraska's open practice.
Yeah, I think this was big just for, I think, a lot of the fans to just further see what we all saw in the spring and kind of saw in the spring game as well. Just the command and the leadership Dylan has already as a freshman. I think that's the number one takeaway, I think, coming out of the weekend. Again, obviously hasn't been announced just yet, but kind of feels like a formality at this point that he's going to be the guy. But I think that's a big takeaway for me. I think just going back and looking over the footage and stuff, and again, it's a guy that I think in the moment a lot of people were thrown off by just the way that recruitment went. But I think Mekhi Nelson's going to be a guy for Nebraska. He just kept popping in those running back drills, is in that room. Good speeds, good size, like a good combination of things. They've got a room that can do some stuff. I think seeing Irvin, I was pleasantly surprised at how healthy Irvin looked. I wasn't sure just how ready he'd be for the season. And then again, like just some of the young guys on both sides of the ball, Keona Davis, that was a guy that caught our eye when he enrolled in the summer. We saw him at camp back in June, just volunteering at camp, and it's like this guy's eye level with Ty Robinson. That's not normal. There's not a whole lot of guys on the team that can do that. But he's a big dude, already developed, it seems, this summer. Impressed by him, impressed by the DBs. I think the faith they have in Jeremiah Charles is interesting. That's a guy that doesn't have a whole lot of true DB experience, but a very unique athlete, an elite athlete, like truly, but doesn't have true DB experience. So I'm curious to see how much playtime he truly gets in the season. Once Bly Hill comes back, once they get Sierra Wright up to speed, and fitting in Marcus Buford, like it sounds like they're trying to fit him in a corner too. So I'm curious to see how much Jeremiah plays, but I think he's going to get a chance for sure. I feel like that feels certain at this point.
Quickly, Tim, take us back. You mentioned him, Mekhi Nelson. It was a bit of a weird recruitment where it happened really late over the summer. He gets an offer. He makes it out to Lincoln. He commits. Now he's on the roster. In a running back room that's got a lot of talent, but no one that has quite emerged. The report on Saturday was it was Johnson & Johnson out of the backfield that took a lot of the first-team reps, but it's still pretty open. What can you tell us about Mekhi Nelson? Because that recruitment was weird, and I don't think a lot of Husker fans even know the name.
Yeah, so this is a kid that played his high school ball at Wilkes-Barre up in Pennsylvania, had like a handful of regional offers, UMass, UConn, a couple of those, had a prior relationship with E.J. Bartell dating back to Bartell's time at UConn. And was originally a class of 2024 recruit. Halfway through the 2020 or the 2023-2024 school year, he moved to St. Thomas More, a prep school in Connecticut. And the goal was he was going to do a prep year, try and earn some more offers, and then leave after that prep year. Pretty much the same thing Marcus Buford did. Buford pretty much had the same path, 4 years of high school, 1 year of prep. Nelson didn't even get to that fifth year of prep year because Nebraska offered, and he was able to work it out where he didn't even have to go to prep school. He just pretty much immediately enrolled at Nebraska. As a player, a guy that's been very productive. I think he ran, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I think he cleared 1,700 yards last year. Like a true like 5'11", 6 foot, 190 pounds, well built, still has frame to like add to that, still has like space to add to that frame, add more muscle. I think he can clear 200 before it's all said and done. And he's quick. Like I think you see he's a weapon out of the backfield, like really quick for his size, can separate downfield. Didn't play the best competition at the high school level, but his burst, his acceleration, just his fluidity is really impressive. And then something that I'll say as well, just talking to people that have seen him in person in multiple camp settings, and we saw him in camp settings as well. So just kind of corroborates that as well. The kid's very competitive. Like, he went to that Under Armour camp in Pennsylvania, which is how he got the offer from Nebraska. And there was a point in that camp where like his parents basically had to come down and like calm him down a little bit because he was just so amped up. Like he was just trying to just run through people. And it's like, again, it's not a padded camp or anything, but just has that mentality of wants to run through guys, wants to like, enforce his will on guys, and wants to compete. And then you saw that again at the Nebraska camp, was constantly at the front of the line, was constantly fighting for reps, eventually got pulled out of camp, just I think for a health reason, just because he was doing so many different things. He was playing multiple positions in camp. But a guy the staff really likes, Bartell specifically really likes, and I think he's found a home. They brought him in as an athlete, but I think he's really found a home in the running back room early on.
Tim Verghese with us inside Nebraska, Hail Varsity Radio, Rivals.com. Tim, we'll get to some recruiting here in a moment, but this is kind of a theme today. And in a day where stocks and portfolios are getting bludgeoned, I'm going to ask you the stock question about Nebraska. Why are you optimistic or more optimistic about Nebraska? What's your why for 2024?
What's my why? I would say I just think quarterback play improvement and then offensive weapon improvement. Like the defense is going to be I don't expect them to drop off a whole lot from last year. Expect more of the same there. And again, I've kind of maintained this on the board too, but like I think there's some questions obviously with the O-line, but I think the unit overall, I think, ended last season very strong, and I think they're going to pick up where they left off. The big question and the only thing really for me had been just addressing the pass catcher situation, and they've done that. Jamal Banks, reliable. Isaiah Neal, more of a deep threat. I think Saturday and throughout, I mean, this has just been a kind of a pattern with him. He has a bit of like a drops issue, so you're going to have to see him be more of like a deep threat, I think. But I'm curious to see what happens with Neal. But then Jalen Lloyd, Ja'Cory Barney, Carter Nelson, Thomas Fidone. I mean, that list goes on. You saw Keelan Smith out there. Davon Hall kind of in that mix. Alex Bullock. Like, it's a good group of pass catchers now. So between having Dylan out there and improved play from Heinrich as well, and getting Jalen Gramstead in there as well, like that's 3 reliable, consistent arms you have now. I just think when you're getting more than nothing from your quarterback, you figure to hopefully win some games.
Fair enough. Recruiting front, Tim, let's talk about Nebraska. Let's talk about Mr. Sanders. Let's talk about Hawthorne. And where do things sit right now? Is Nebraska still in hot pursuit of some finishing touches for 2025?
Yeah, it's fully closing time. I think again, no more visits this month, but there's a couple big decisions they're waiting this month. Sanders is one. I mean, again, we're heading into this final stretch here. He set a time. He's going to be committing at 11:30 Central Time on August 17th. Again, I think it still feels Tennessee. Just the latest. I did some digging over the weekend just to see if anything's changed on that front strongly. Again, the whispers I'm hearing now are still kind of Tennessee's direction, but Nebraska's working. Nebraska's still working there. Ohio State's still working. I think one thing to keep in mind when talking about Ohio State in this recruitment, offensive line's been their weakness just on the recruiting front. It's just they've not been able to recruit that position well. Justin Fry, their O-line coach, is kind of the guy on the staff that's like the weak point of the recruiting staff, I guess, at least. And for better or worse, they've kind of gone all in on David Sanders. Like they need to land him kind of type, like Fry kind of his job's kind of on the line. If they're not able to get Sanders, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the framing I've heard from Ohio State side. So they're going all in here. Like I don't think there's a number here that's going to scare them at this point. Like they're going all in on him. And even regardless of that, I still continue to hear Tennessee's on top. Nebraska's still working as well. And again, Nebraska, at least from the NIL standpoint, is making this competitive. And they've checked off a lot of those boxes too. I think we talked about it last week, but something I did kind of figure out these last couple of days, at least for sure, got confirmed for sure, was that family's comfortable in Lincoln, which was a big thing that Nebraska had to check off and answer. Was can the family? He's a big family guy. He wants to be in a place where his family's comfortable. The family's comfortable in Lincoln. The family has faith in Rhule. They feel like he'll be at home in Lincoln. So again, I would say this. I think your reason for optimism here is Nebraska has a real shot. Like this isn't just like hyping up like, oh, Nebraska had a 5-star in town and they're going to be a hat at the table, but they don't have a real shot. They have a real shot. Like they are very much in here. It's just heading into this final stretch. I just think time isn't on their side, which is the negative. But again, I've seen crazier things happen in big recruitments like this. Again, you're in a big recruitment now. You're in a 5-star recruitment. These things, you gotta go with the ebbs and flows here in that one. On the flip side, I will say I still continue to hear Texas for Michael Terry. But Nebraska's visit last week did get Nebraska at least above Oregon. Like I think it's coming down now to Texas and Nebraska for him. Still give Texas the edge. Still think it's going to be tough to pull them out of that state. But at this point, I give Nebraska a better shot with Terry than I do Sanders. Still not super, super bullish that Nebraska lands either, obviously. But, they're in the mix with both. And again, like I will say another positive, I think, update with Terry is just checking in there this weekend. He was hoping to make a decision shortly after this final stretch of visits last weekend. And now he's like, I kind of want to push it to the season if possible.
Tim, hang tight. We'll follow up on that. Tim Verghese with us from Rivals Inside Nebraska. Hail Varsity continues.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you Monday edition. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska, Rivals.com, at Tim Verghese on Twitter. Little overtime with us. Tim's like, yep, I am keeping track of my overtime hours with you two yahoos. But we love talking some recruiting with Tim.
Time and a half, Tim, we promise.
That's it. We're just going to call this segment Time and a Half now.
That's not bad.
As long as he doesn't, stop taking our link tweets to him.
But Tim, as we continue this conversation here about David Sanders Jr. and Michael Terry III, you mentioned Michael Terry potentially pushing back that commitment being a positive for Nebraska. Can you dive into that? Why is that advantage Nebraska if he does in fact push it back?
I think with anybody, it's an advantage for Nebraska at this point because it's something I've kind of maintained throughout this offseason is the one question that especially national recruits have with Nebraska right now is they just haven't seen wins. Like they want to see positive results. For a kid like Terry, who the other two contenders are Texas and Oregon. Texas fresh off, a berth in the college football playoff, and then Oregon is building something and they're winning. They're winning consistently. They have an upward trajectory and they have the results to match. For Nebraska, it's just they have to put together a winning season or at least start the season strong. I think if you can get Michael Terry to push the decision into September and you start the year off with rattling off a couple wins, and you can even get him up for a game day visit, you stand a much better shot than you do right now. So I think that would potentially work out for Nebraska. And either way, I think with both of these guys, Nebraska's not going to be done even if they make a decision elsewhere this month or in the coming weeks. I think Nebraska's going to push with both of these guys till the end. And again, a good season could be enough to swing both of those guys back to Nebraska because Nebraska's checked off pretty much every other box for both of these players. Again, the one thing that both of these guys are just waiting to see is they talk a lot about development. Is it true? They talk a lot about getting this program turned around. Can they actually do it? So those two things, if Nebraska can answer that this fall, which I think they can, if they can answer that this fall, I think you're going to see a lot of top recruiting targets at least take care of themselves.
Tim Verghese with us here on Hail Varsity. And Tim, with as much in the past 3 weeks as we've talked about Isaiah Mosey and David Sanders and Michael Terry, Will Hawthorne is a name that's kind of gone by the wayside. It's been a two-horse race for a lot of it between Nebraska and Iowa State. Where is Will Hawthorne at on Nebraska's priority list in terms of recruiting, and where do you think that recruitment stands as of right now?
Yeah, I think the name's kind of slipped under some people's radar, but I think it shouldn't be forgotten that he's still a top target. They're pretty much, at this point in the linebacker room, they're going in on two names. It's him and Christian Jones. And this is one that still remains truly 50-50. I check in on him about once a week, and I'm just like, how are you doing, man? Are you leading anywhere yet? And just, we kind of text back and forth. At the same time, I kind of it's kind of gotten to the point too where I truly do feel for the kid. It's a tough decision. He's truly torn too. The opportunity to stay home is it's tugging at him. But at the same time, the opportunity to play in the Big Ten, try something new, and he's got people on the Nebraska side like Caden Vermas and Pierce Mooberry and Jackson Carpenter, a bunch of Nebraska current commits too are working on him. So he's got people here he considers friends that are trying to get him to come to Nebraska. At the same time, he's got friends back home that are trying to get him to obviously stay home. And so he's truly torn. And yeah, at this point, he kind of was hoping to make a decision in July. We're 5 days into August and the decision still isn't here. Nothing would surprise me at this point. If he pushes it deeper into the fall and I'm also curious to see, because he's a kid that does really fit the Big Ten just in terms of style of play. Iowa never offered, and I've heard a couple of reasons as to why Iowa has not offered. But I do wonder if the season comes around and Iowa circles back on the film and they offer, are they a factor at all in this recruitment? Does any other Big Ten school enter this recruitment and become a factor, or is this truly still just going to be Nebraska and Iowa State till he ultimately makes a decision? Which at this point, it could be any day now. It could be September or October.
With Iowa, let's talk Hawkeyes. They've got a really incredible history of linebacker play. The guys that go to the league from Josie Jewell to Campbell to the dudes they got in that second level for this 2024 season. Is he waiting on an Iowa offer, or is the vicinity and his heart, has it been Iowa State for most of his
heart? It's been
football
Iowa
life?
State, and that's actually like part of it. And I kind of hinted, but like again, as far as I've heard, part of the reason Iowa is not offered yet is they knew the kid grew up an Iowa State fan, and they just were like, we don't think we're gonna have a chance here, but you're Iowa. It's one of the better linebackers in the state, at least Nebraska's done that before with guys that aren't necessarily Nebraska fans, and they've managed to get them. Like, it's you could try again. And in terms of program trajectory and everything, I think people are higher on Iowa than they are Iowa State just moving forward as well. So, again, this kid is being very realistic about his recruitment as well. I mean, the big pitch from Nebraska has been the future of college football is the Big Ten and the SEC. Why would you go to the Big 12? Like, come play in the Big Ten and come try something new, and you fit the style of play. And this is the peak of the sport. Like, come play here. So the kid is being very smart about his process and like not just going where his heart is. He's trying to figure out, what the best business decision is for him too. And that's why I think hypothetically, if Iowa had entered this a couple of months ago, they'd be a real player here. At this point, I just think it's too late for anyone to get involved. But I don't think Iowa would be a real factor, but I also don't know what an Iowa offer would necessarily mean to him at the same time. Like, just it is a little bit closer to home than Nebraska is, and it kind of gives him that best of both worlds type where he gets to play in the Big Ten and potentially stay home. But yeah, I mean, the reason Iowa hasn't offered is because they just didn't think he was going to come.
Tim Verghese with us inside Nebraska, Rivals.com, at Tim Verghese on Twitter. Tim, we'll bump into you down at some media availability this week, and we'll check in with you next week. Always appreciate the time and a half, man.
Yes, sir. Of course. Always appreciate y'all. We'll talk later.
There he is, Tim Verghese with us. Good stuff with Tim. Always love his insight, his connections, his candor. Good stuff. Negative Mike checks in. Elijah, something you've touched on, and the look in Boulder. We'll have Barney on with us next week, but you had Athlon reporting that the Buffs had a little fight club going on. Reset that real quick.
There's a whole bunch of reports coming out just about the toxic locker room culture. You had Cormani McLean, who is the highly touted defensive back. Apparently, Shiloh Sanders started verbally berating him and slapping him in the locker room after they lost to Oregon State, which regressed to McLean threatening to kill Shiloh Sanders in the locker room. So you had that. You had this new
you had death threats.
Yeah, you had that. You had this new offensive tackle, Jordan Seaton, the 5-star, apparently had to fight a offensive lineman that graduated last year in order to prove his manhood and prove his place in the locker room. He was kind of bullied into having a fist fight in the locker room. You had guys...
Did he win?
Unsure. You had guys, apparently there's like a personal gambling debt between the two of them, and they got in a fight over their gambling debt in the locker room. Like, it's been a whole mess.
I need a
out in
down
Boulder.
payment, or the VIG is principal plus interest. That juice keeps running type.
Yeah.
It's like and Uncle Paulie when you're Christopher.
Yes.
In that Sopranos episode.
Yeah, you've nailed it. So apparently that happened. And again, this all comes from one report from Athlon, who they apparently spoke with anonymous sources around the locker room who claim to know. It's not corroborated by any other news services, but it kind of sounds on par with what we'd expect from Colorado, what we've been hearing out of there. So that's been really interesting to follow.
The other Elijah says CU fans not accepting the Athlon reports due to their Athlon false claims previously. We'll wind down hour one.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play to get caught up with the podcast. Invite you to subscribe and like the pod. Give us a review. We appreciate that. As always, can find us on the YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe there. And follow and replay if you want on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter at HVarsity Radio. 489-1240, 489-1240 to get in. 800-825-5865. Toll free across the Hail Varsity Radio Network. We'll have some thoughts from Coach McBride here in about 10 minutes. What's he think about his alma mater, the Buffs and Fight Club? What's his takeaway so far with the team leadership and Dylan Raiola moving forward? And his why. Why does he think Nebraska will be better this year? There's plenty of substance behind that question and reasons. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. KG is checking in. I was a passenger in the Dow crash. Good thing I wore my seatbelt like Schmidt always tells us. Elijah, how is your portfolio? Or are you just buying straight whiskey after the show?
Buying the dip. If it's going to dip, I'm going to buy.
Okay.
Because in the long run, I'm talking long run here. 20 years, 25 years, whatever we're talking here.
Because you got into the markets at what age?
Oh, 18.
Sure.
Yeah. And in the long run, stocks always go up.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually. Unless the business fails completely, in which case it drops to zero. But stocks always go up. Your portfolio in the long run always goes up. So buy the dip. See that?
Faith?
Some see this.
Faith in the market.
Some see this as a disaster. Some see today as an opportunity.
KG says no. You buy when it's high and sell when it's low.
Ah, yes.
Uh-huh. You buy if you're high when it's high. And then you sell it low. But, yeah, I don't have too much portfolio action. I've got the old Roth IRA. And assuming she doesn't kick me out when he leaves, Junior starts his senior year next week. As soon as he's out, I hope I'm not out.
You never know, do you?
No, I don't. I got to be nice. I got to find out where the I got to start helping around the house physically, I guess.
Or hit it big on the stock market with this opportunity that we have today. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Great opportunity. I like it. So one note, though, you had Gradney on Instagram pretty much posted he's gonzo for the year. He got carted off on Saturday, which is too bad. Really talented player that Nebraska had, and not good. Injuries are going to happen. That doesn't make it any less traumatic physically or mentally for a player, but that's going to be so key for the Big Red to stay somewhat injury-free. Get the hits and the barbarian aspect you need to be a tough football team, but also don't overdo.
It's a real fine line to walk between getting the guys physically ready for the season and not physically beating them up before the season.
Or, for that matter, in the locker room. So we'll check in with Coach McBride. He's on the way. Jay Moore with us. It's Hour 2 on the way. Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
This is Christian Peter. I'm sorry, but the stories I have about Charlie are not appropriate for the public.
The right case of the Mondays. It's Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Mr. Blackshirt, a Monday with Charlie. Coach Charlie McBride with us. So we're into the first full week of camp, week 2 overall. Coach McBride, how we doing? How was the weekend? Thanks for the time today.
Well, it was good. The weekend, the weather was still on and off, windy one day and cool the next, and warm the one day and kind of lousy the next. So we don't have any consistency in what's going on up here. We just hope for the best. I was going to try to paint the deck that we have out here, but it keeps raining, and so I just gave up.
Hey, you know what? It's all right. There's some football to watch. The deck will still be there. And you'll get after it.
This weather is too hot for home improvement, in my humble opinion. You got to find a better time of year.
Yeah, McBride's rolling his eyes at us right now. Hot. I'll tell you about hot during 2-a-days, right?
Yeah, that's right. I've been there before. And when I was coaching at Arizona State, tried that one once.
No,
when you're sitting.
I'm okay. I'm okay. Desert heat hits different, I think. But, Coach, I want to start off with Saturday night. Nebraska had a practice. It wasn't padded. They can't get into pads legally yet, so it was just in helmets and jerseys and shorts. But 3,500 Husker fans came out, part of an NIL fundraiser. What'd you think of Nebraska opening things up, kind of starting a new tradition for Big Red fans to be able to watch their guys?
That's good. I think that's important. It's their team, and I know guys that we couldn't even get in. I mean, some practices, there have been some coaches in the past that didn't want anybody there. Mm-hmm. And then again, there's some coaches that want all the past players and coaches to come to practice, and now they've added not only the coaches, but they've added some of the people, and I think it's really it's good for them. It's good for young kids to see what's going on and to kind of see how they practice, and maybe some kids will start playing football and that didn't before, and stuff like that, and it's just, I just think overall for the community, it's a nice thing to have.
Charlie, would you have been okay with fans coming to watch you coach at practice? I know you were a fiery guy. Would that have concerned you at all to have like women and children in the stands watching you?
Hey, we had students walking through the stadium while we were practicing. I mean, we didn't even close the gates. So whoever really wanted to come to watch and practice probably could go. If you were another school, you'd probably go sit down and watch. But we weren't, super worried about a lot of things. We just practiced and didn't pay much attention to them. I mean, the students came through. Some stop and watch for a few seconds, but they were usually on their way to class and everything. But there was, maybe 20 or 30 students at a time go through there. And, on both sides, some going one way, some going the other. But it was kind of good. Some of the players knew some of them and yell hello to them and stuff like that. So I had to get used to that part, but it was kind of neat though.
Charlie McBride's with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio, a Monday with Charlie. Coach, we were talking about this in hour one, and I want to ask you, what gives you hope that this year is better when we talk about the season, the team? Why do you think the 2024 season Nebraska can make some strides and hit on some expectations? The internal expectations are pretty big, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's quite a few things you could look at. Of course, it's the turnovers and some of those things that it's no secret that, those things are the best things. But there's something that, nobody really talks about, and that's, self-imposed penalties, illegal procedures and things like that, and maybe somebody shoving and pushing and things like that. That really hurts your whole team. Mm-hmm. And I know you want to do it, and I know that it's a manly thing that somebody pushes you, you push them back, but I think a lot of times you're seeing a little bit more of kind of the backing off stuff in the NFL. Actually, last year I was surprised that a few times things got started and they backed off, and so it was. It was kind of better to see that, but I don't know. I think you're looking pretty much for that, and of course the development of the players, mm-hmm. and you really don't know how much stronger they've gotten over the summer, and you get a little bit of a, you may see their records of how much weight they've gained, lifting weights they've become at each lift, and mm-hmm. things like that, and that's kind of fun for the coaches to look at, but see if it transports over to the field, and that's the difference, and quickness. That's a big thing, and usually with a good winter program with a lot of agility, stretching and things like that, you know, so lifting and stretching and all those things are what make you fast. You know, especially the big guys. They get a lot of the bigger guys are usually a little hips. They're a little tight in the hips and things like that when they're young, and that has to develop.
Coach, what kind of strides can be made through fall camp by some of these young guys? You talk about the importance of the off-season development and yeah, working on your body, getting your athleticism up. That's going to be big, but how much can a guy truly improve throughout the course of fall camp? Are there any cases of guys that you thought whenever fall camp started they're going to be buried on the depth chart, and then as fall camp went on they got better and worked their way up into playing time? Are there any stories that reminds you of, or is that possible? What type of strides can a guy make throughout the month-long fall camp?
I think the teaching part, and I think the hardest thing to teach usually, you know, is both sides of the ball lineman-wise. And repetition for the linebackers in different drills and things like that. But I think the biggest thing, you know, early is we kind of divided our practice, you know, into running and passing. I don't think we made it a point to, but we kind of spent more time on the throwing the football on the second practice we had that day, and I think they're only practicing once a day now, so I don't know how they're going to do that. Maybe just make it longer and that. But those are the things you want to see. I mean, you want to see a difference in speed. And the young guys, you want to see them run. You want to see them do things, how tough they are, and you know, and how consistent they are. A lot of times, you know, I asked one of the players, it was a defensive lineman from Utah one day, how long they spent on defense a day. He said, no, about 15 minutes. I said, what? He said, well, what did they teach you? He said, no, they just told us where to line up. And, I mean, that's the kind of thing that really, you know, so, you know, you got a guy that doesn't have a lot of bad, doesn't have a lot of bad stuff that he brought with him, you know, and we're...
Coach, we got you. Maybe the gremlins appeared. Should we try reconnecting?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, we'll try and get Coach back on, so maybe a little hiccup there with the old cell phone. So we'll try and reconnect with Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. Jay Moore on the way here in about 10 minutes. There is some thoughts as to some names that may make a push for some time. We were talking special teams a little bit ago, and Buschini, with his consistency, does that open the door for a Camden Cook? Possibly. You got Hole and Nico with the field goals, so we'll see where that is. Alvano's got to come back healthy. We'll get Coach McBride back locked in here on Hail Varsity. Got him? All right, we got him. Coach, we lost you for a second. I want to ask you about Dylan Raiola. He looked good Saturday night, good command, no turnovers, is doing the simple things really well. What do you think he can do for this offense paired with the defense back into that why can Nebraska be better this year? The quarterback, even as a freshman, how big a key is that for you?
Well, the one thing I do know is fundamentally, when he was in Arizona, I know those coaches. Mm-hmm. And, I spent a lot of time down there. And after I retired, I went to some of their high school practices. Mm-hmm. And they're really aware of all of those things really, really hard. I mean, the penalties and, the holdings and things like that. So, they come there. At some places they're pretty well schooled, and in other places it's just you got to work at it a little bit harder and things like that. But I think the young kids are getting better because they're better coached.
Okay. Charlie McBride's with us. It's Hail Varsity. Coach, we got to ask you about Colorado. because they've been in the news today. There's reports out from Athlon that there's been a whole bunch of dissatisfaction in the locker room. Elijah, you can lay out some of the specifics for Coach.
Yeah, we had a new offensive line recruit apparently have to fight a recently graduated offensive lineman in order to prove his manhood and prove his place in the locker room. You had, after a loss last year, an incoming 5-star who didn't play his best get slapped around by the son of Deion Sanders. Apparently slapped him a couple times after the game while chewing him out. There's more beyond that. Lots of
gambling
fights,
to
gambling,
teammates.
a little bit of everything in that locker room.
I don't, that kind of stuff that's teaching kids how to play the game. To me is the most important thing at this time of the year. A lot of that stuff is good. If it's a conditioning type of thing, maybe that's a team thing. Everything, you got guys standing around watching, and they're losing all kinds of time with, when they could be improving themselves, whether they're in or out of pads, doesn't make any difference. But I think when when you want to have a good football team, first of all, you want to have somebody that teaches you well. And I think I keep emphasizing the teaching part, but I thought basically that's what we were. We were teachers and tried to get them to be better than they thought they could be, and work really hard at it. And I had a good 20 to 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes of group work each day, and that it was all on fundamental stuff, the blocking schemes we saw, how the offensive linemen set on their passes and their different play actions and things like that, so that when they go to the game, they got an idea what's going on. And a lot of them find out and said, that's exactly what they did. And, that makes a big difference. And when they go in with some confidence that it's, what they're doing is helping. And then that's probably the name of the game. It's the same thing when you're teaching is don't walk out of the classroom, and forget everything, that the teacher talked about. So a lot of our guys went back and wrote down all the things they learned that day. And then I had them do that in the spring a little bit and write down for a week or so. I did, and had them bring it in and let me see what they wrote.
Not enough time in the day to be messing around in the locker room other than trying to retain what you learned and put into use what you've been taught.
Just throw your dirty socks in a bag and everything else, and then put all the clean stuff on and go out and play.
Yeah, simple enough. Sounds pretty simple. Coach McBride, we'll give you a shout next week as we get closer to kickoff. We're 26 days away, so Nebraska will keep at it. We get to hear from Coach Butler tomorrow, which is pretty awesome. He is the new secondary coach, so excited about that. But you take care. You stay cool with the weather, all right?
The weather's been perfect here right now. It was really hot, but it's good.
All right.
Take care.
See you, Coach.
I'll talk to you next week.
All right,
Thanks a lot
appreciate you.
for having. Okay, bye now.
There he is, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. We will make sure we jump into some thoughts with Jay Moore, because Blackshirt Jay going to join us. And, Charlie's reaction to that report from Athlon, you could just hear in his voice that, he didn't really go in on a reaction, per se, to what's being reported about the Buffs. And the Buffs aren't real friendly towards Athlon.
No.
Doesn't sound like.
No, there's been history there.
Yeah, there is some history. Wouldn't put it past the reports.
No.
To be honest. Jay Moore's with us. Get his take on reasons for optimism. It's Hail Varsity. Good to be with you on a Monday. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore with this part of the Blackshirt Hour. A Big Red wrap-up is where you'll watch Jaybird this fall at JMoore44. Give him a follow on Twitter. Jay, how many golf balls did you lose this weekend up yonder?
Let's see here. I lost one, and that was the very first tee shot of our practice round on Thursday. After we left our flight out of Omaha. It was at 5:40 in the morning, and then connected to Chicago, then flew up to Grand Rapids, and then drove 2 hours to the golf course. We're way up north Michigan. So had one, that first tee shot. It wasn't that bad of a tee shot, just kind of in some longer stuff, couldn't find it. But played okay for the rest of it, played with the same golf ball the next 2 days on a pretty difficult golf course, but we had fun up there with my pal, Johnny Spellerberg, who's one of the best golfers in the state. We had fun, little national 4-ball event at Kingsley Club, and way up in Kingsley, Michigan, just south of Traverse City, so a place I'd never been. Yeah, back here and ready to get back to work.
So you, like us, are catching up on the sights and sounds of Saturday night's fundraiser. Dylan took care of the football, made some nice throws. You had Turner Corcoran at left tackle with the top unit. And away we go. I want to broaden this out and ask why. Why are you optimistic for Nebraska this year? Why do you think it's going to be better than it's been in past years? AP poll came out, or the coaches poll, I should say. Klatt's got his ranking out. We talked about that earlier. Nebraska comes in at 23 there. Jay Moore says why Nebraska will be a little less Pepto-Bismol dependent in 2024.
Yeah, definitely. Why am I more bullish, unlike the markets today?
Tell me about it.
I am bullish on Nebraska because of a lot of reasons, but I think one is how successful Rule's been in year 2 at previous stops with Baylor and Temple. How close they were to not necessarily getting over the hump, but I saw a lot of good things last year. Obviously, the turnovers were, the fly in the pudding that, they cut those in half, which easily can be done. The offense had 31 turnovers last year. You cut those in half, which is still a lot. It's a drastically different scenario. Other reason why I am very optimistic, you had a handful of your best players come back. Bryce Benhart, Isaac Gifford, Ty Robinson, Nash Hutchmacher. They could have easily declared for the NFL draft and said, yeah, I've had enough. My time's been, Nebraska's been enough. Haven't had a lot of success. I'm just ready to move on. They didn't. They know the internal workings of what's going on, the culture, the relationship, the new staff, what's going on. So I got to put some weight into that as well. And then you look at, they're improved at key spots. I think with those guys returning that I just mentioned, I think the offensive line is finally more of a strength rather than a weakness on the offensive side. Defensive line, 2 of your best players and the whole team are on the defensive line coming back. Isaac Gifford, another player, one of the best players in defense coming back. You have a lot of young players last year. Princewell, Jamari Butler. You just go down the Cam Lenhart, a lot of young players who are that played well at a high level that are obviously coming back as well. So there's more than one, but then you got to mention Dylan Raiola, and that's an improvement at the quarterback position. Getting him, I think, just speaks volumes to the momentum and the message that's been given to recruits. I don't want to put the cart before the horse too much, but he's going to help this offense and this team a lot this year. So with all that being said, that's why I think, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I think like an 8-4 record is a very, very realistic situation and for this team, on August 5th, and we still have 26 days till UTEP. But everything that I've heard and everything I've seen, and just knock on wood, everyone stays healthy at those key spots. But again, I'm just thinking of more reasons why. Depth at running back, depth at the wide receiver position. You got big tight end targets to throw to. There's a lot to be optimistic about, and the record kind of sets up for them early to finally get some momentum and some confidence going that hasn't been there in the years past. So there's 7-8 reasons why I am bullish or optimistic on why Nebraska is going to finally get over the hump and get used to what we know as winning football.
Jay, where does the second year of rebuilding the team culture stand, the locker room feel, if you will, where does that factor into this conversation about optimism? Because that's going to be a big factor with Nebraska's ability to get over the hump in some of those close games that have been such an issue for them in recent years. Culture factors into that, kind of having that belief in the guy next to you and that belief in yourself. And as you hear reports coming out of Boulder this weekend, unsure how true they are, but they're pretty scathing reviews of the culture at Colorado. It flies in sharp contrast to the culture that Matt Rhule is trying to build at Nebraska. We've seen some of that in the Chasing 3 docu-series this offseason. But just big picture question, where does the team culture of Matt Rhule, what he's instilled within his team, where does that factor into your optimism conversation?
I think it's a lot to do with it. That's kind of goes back to my first reasoning was, year 1 to year 2, and that's a lot to do with culture, mindset, mental toughness, dealing with adversity. There's a lot of things that can be said about that. And I think going back to with Ty and Nash and Isaac and Bryce Benhart and their ability, they could have left, like I said. But if it was bad, if culture was bad and not in a great space, they're probably not coming back. They're like, I want out of this place. I want nothing to do with it anymore. I'm tired of going to school. I'm tired of not winning. I'm tired, whatever it is. They could have left, but they didn't. They chose to come back. Now, obviously, they're getting compensated for that, but I don't think it's as much as potentially a rookie minimum contract the NFL is. So, but the culture is important. I think the buy-in is there. The relationships are there with staff, between coaches and players. This staff is very happy for the opportunity to be here. I truly believe that. Unlike, I think, some other staffs in the past found reasons why they couldn't succeed, and this staff is more on how we they see how can't we succeed here because of all the relationships and the resources and the support. That's part of a culture thing. So. Yeah, it's just not as easy as one thing when you talk to culture, but I think the leadership is in a good spot between the players. Obviously, Coach Rhule's a fantastic leader, says the right things. I think he lets his coaches coach, but I think Rhule still kind of has his fingerprint on everything. I think the team toughness is the mental toughness has improved. It's not going to be perfect this year. You're going to have signs where oh my gosh, what are we doing? But I think this team will finally be able to get over the hump and finally be able to just not do things that they've done in the past, right? Turn it over, penalties, whatever it is. And turnovers obviously being the main one. But I have zero issues with or concerns on the culture side of things. I think that's been better than ever, even though they had a 5-7 season last year.
Jay Moore's with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio at JMoore44 on Twitter. Big Red Wrap-Ups where you'll watch him all fall long, recapping and previewing Nebraska's week to week. And Jay, that point you made about a business decision versus a personal decision, and the guys made that personal decision because they wanted to leave Nebraska better than they found it, inherited it, or lived it. That's a big statement. And with your era and your team, I'm interested to kind of get your personal experience on that peer voice. And there's a lot of peer voice on this team, not only on the recruiting front from Dylan, trying to woo 4- and 5-star blue chip guys, but the older guys coaching the younger guys. I thought that was really fascinating with Rhule talking about looking out during the summertime, seeing the older guys grooming the young guys. And speak to your experience with that as a guy that was listening to an older guy, but also paying it forward to a younger guy.
Yeah, that's important because you can't be around coaches all the time. And there has to be some accountability amongst your peer position groups. And I was fortunate enough to come in and, I had guys like Chris Kelsey and Trevor Johnson and Des Moines Adams who were really successful. And, Chris had a fantastic, 10-year career in the NFL. So there's no one better to learn from than him. And then, as myself and guys like Adam Carricker, and we, get older, you have recruits that come in and, I have to do the same thing for a Barry Turner or a Zach Potter or a Ty Steinkooler, an Dominican Sue. And you want them to feel comfortable. You want them to not be afraid, not be afraid to ask questions. I think sometimes you can come into a room where you're young, man. You're from out of state. You're from how many miles away. Everything's different, and you can, sometimes you can sit back in your chair and not want to be seen or heard because you're afraid to make mistakes, right? But you want guys to ask questions. You want guys not to be afraid to make mistakes, and you want them to learn and tell them certain things. And it's tough as well though because it's a competitive thing, right? Barry Turner comes in and plays a true freshman. But it's a good thing, right? Because I'm like, he's not taking my job as well. So there has to be a healthy mix of that as well because I want him to succeed. I want myself to succeed. I know Barry's going to help us win, but also improves my, having accountability on myself to practice the right way, to do things the right way because I don't want to lose my job to a freshman, right? So it's unique, but it has to happen. It just does. It happens in the NFL same way. Guys get drafted and into a room, and same thing. Those guys have been there for how many years? You get the younger guys that come in and are trying to take your jobs too, but you have to help them along the way and teach them and bring them up to speed on everything. So I mean, there's a lot to it. It's the coaching side of things. It's how to be a good person, a student, handle the student athlete thing. How do you all these things? Studying tape. What do you look for in little things? Developing a new pass rush. How do you, take this block on? What do you do in this scenario? There's so many things, so many different aspects that older players can help young players. But that speaks to having good culture is when guys are willing to do that and want to do that. Because I guarantee you it doesn't happen in a lot of places. Some guys are just like, the hell with this young guy. He's trying to take my job. I'm not helping him. I got other stuff to do. I got other things to worry about. But when you have that that camaraderie and respect amongst everybody, that's you're kind of getting to brighter days and some special days ahead.
It's Jay Moore with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking a little bit of culture, locker room, behind the scenes, and leadership. And Jay, with all this in mind, I want to get back to what I asked you briefly about Colorado. A report out this weekend from Athlon Sports indicating some younger guys in the locker room. Jordan Seaton, their 5-star offensive tackle, was named. Cormani McLean, who entered the transfer portal this past offseason, also named. As apparently these guys had to go into the locker room and essentially get into physical altercations, fistfights with their teammates in the locker room in order to earn respect. I want your thoughts on that. Do you ever see anything like that? What is your response to what Coach Prime's got cooking up in Boulder with fistfights in locker rooms?
Yeah, that's rather unique. No, I've never seen or heard of people trying to instigate any fights, anything to test their toughness, or I mean that's almost like necessarily a hazing thing, but that's weird. I mean that doesn't happen. You've seen. Carrying pads, helmets, stuff like that. You might get dunked in a cold tank, but the fight, it's just that doesn't seem too healthy to me. That's the last thing too. It's hard when you're dealing with young players. They come in, especially when you're a rookie and you've gone through college and you got some money in the bank. I know these college kids have money in the bank, but the hazing or the stuff that happens in NFL, looking like they're 24, 25-year-old men. They can deal with some of that stuff. You got to be a little careful though when you're dealing with young kids in high school coming out of there. This is a whole new world for them. They're young, and they're immature, and out of state and a long ways from home, long ways from mom and dad. And the last thing I want to do is signal out or do anything to kind of affect their mental, stability. So rather interesting. I haven't seen that report. The first thing, you want to make sure first and foremost that these young kids are comfortable. They're not too intimidated with the whole scenario, because that can be easily for some of these young kids that come in. But I don't know that whole situation. Maybe it was a situation where these young kids, and I've seen it, they come in running their mouth, thinking they're the biggest, baddest, things since sliced bread, and they're going to take everyone's starting job. And maybe that's the case. All right, bro, prove it. All right, so two different aspects to it, but that doesn't speak well to culture, what's going on in Boulder. So that's always been. They've been doing some rather unique things in Boulder for a while, but that one sure takes the cake.
Fight Club, my lord.
Yeah, one of the players called it literally Grand Theft Auto in the locker room.
I'm going to beat you, I'm going to take your girl, and I'm going to take your ride. Well, Jay, you touched on that selfish versus selfless, and really that's a healthy team if you're selfless. Because you're checking the I/me for we. And that's a great pipe dream, but the more reality it can become, that turns into wins, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think we're kind of getting
touchy-feely, forgive me, but I'm not interested.
Philosophical here for a second, right? But I think where we fail as humans, and just in today's day and age, is communication. Yeah. I think just with technology and everything like that, talking to someone, people text now, or whatever, they send TikToks or snaps, right? Having good conversation, I think, and that's where things get off kilter in football, is you don't communicate correctly. You don't know how to explain things, because that's a big thing. In the NFL, they have those tablets there that are showing every play and what's going on throughout the play. So you can see, but trying to communicate that to a coach or another player, if the guy's not comfortable communicating to that, that's not good for the team. So I think having that, you got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to say things. You got to say, be comfortable in a scenario where I don't like that. I can't do that. I need help. That's a hard thing for young players to say, is I need help at something. Can you help me on this? I struggle with that day to day, right? Everyone has egos. No one wants to be wrong. No one wants to sound, like they're not good enough. Some people think it's a weakness, right? That I need help. But being able to go to somebody, a player or a coach, and say, I need help on this. Can you help me? And not be, yelled at, chewed out, calling, being called a certain name, whatever, calling soft or something like that, So I think you want that. There's a toughness to football, but also culture-wise, but there's also got to be a time where, God dang, you got to be in a good relationship with your players across the board, coach to players to players, coaches to players, coaches to coaches, because communication is the most important thing. If you don't have communication, everything just falls apart. So you got to have that first and foremost. I know it's a little deep, but I think it's really important, and you can never really. You can. That can always be an area to improve on, is communication, because out in the game, out in the field, everyone's tired, everyone's sucking wind. So you got to be able to communicate and talk, and with calls and certain things and checks and audibles. So it's just when you're playing ball at this high level, no matter what sport, communication is one of the most important aspects of everything.
It's Jay Moore with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jay, as we wind things down here and get you out, want to get your thoughts. Did you get a chance to watch the Olympic golf tournament? Scotty Scheffler takes it home.
Yeah, I know what. I kind of forgot it was on. I climbed into bed about 2:30 in the morning Sunday and slept in a little bit. And sleeping in for me is till 7:30. Mm-hmm. But I think the tournament was well underway, so I had to get up, and I hadn't seen the family in a few days, so wanted to hang out with them and kind of do some yard work and stuff. So I came in to finish it, and he'd already shot bogey-free 62 and was tied for the lead with Fleetwood, and I saw Rahm was had fallen back a little bit, but just the guy's had a year, man. I mean, he's just, when he putts, if he putts good, he's going to win. The guy's ball striking is the best. If he putts okay, he's going to be in contention. If he putts really, really good, he's going to win. So there was just getting a Masters this year. The guy got arrested at one point before the second round of the PGA Championship. I mean, he's had a year, a really, really successful year, and you'll keep hearing about him for a long time. I mean, the guy he's incredible. They won a gold medal, man. You don't do it for the money. You do it for the pride and playing for your country. So it's pretty cool to have, two events with the Olympics and the Ryder Cup that these guys don't make really any money for, but that's some of the most prideful, pressure-filled golf you'll see. So it was a pretty cool scenario. I think the U.S. has gotten the last 2 gold medals. So with Schauffele and obviously Scheffler. So go, red, white, and blue all day.
Jay Moore's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Jay, will check in here next week and gear up for, the season that is only 26 days away as we speak. Thanks for a few minutes.
Yep, you got it, boys. Thank you.
Good to hear from Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore, our Blackshirt Hour. We love it every Monday with Coach McBride and Jay Moore back-to-back. And soon enough, we'll be able to preview and recap the season that is. Nebraska rolling their sleeves up and back at it. We'll have media response and availability tomorrow. We'll set the table for the show tomorrow as well. Good stuff from Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska Rivals in Hour 1. Make sure you find the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the audio portion, video portion, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. We'll wind down a Monday next. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this Monday, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. So tomorrow we'll have a Michael Bruntz sighting. Excited about that. And Mitch Sherman, we are efforting Chris Kelsey. So we'll see if that happens. Some NFL and Nebraska football thoughts. We shall see. But good stuff from Moonbot. Has a serious question about chasing 3. So well done. And Elijah, you did a lot of time at Husker Vision as well, so you know the art that it takes to put a good program together.
An art that is beyond me. I can do it in radio. Radio, I think I'm doing all right. So video is a whole new thing.
Chasing 3, though. He's like, and Moonbot asked the question, how can Chasing 3 get up for an ESPY award? They deserve it. And, it's incredible. It's so well done, so insightful. And not only is it educational, but it's pretty inspiring. My brother's kids were watching it and talking about it at the family reunion, the mini family reunion yesterday, which was great at the old Schmidt house. Coaches poll, 2 votes for Nebraska to be 25, 1 vote for number 24. Joel Klatt's in on Nebraska in his preseason top 25. The coaches have 6 Big Ten teams. You've got Ohio State behind Georgia at 2, Oregon 3, Michigan 8, Penn State 9. Coach Sharon is maybe in some deep water. A bowl ban is not off the table for Michigan this year with the NCAA. Iowa and SC round out your Big Ten teams. Iowa comes in at 25, SC at 23, Wisconsin in at number 34. Washington, kind of weirdly enough, in at 26, but Nebraska would check in tied for 46th. I'm not worried about the preseason ranking. It's nice. Nebraska's not been ranked since 2019 going into that Colorado game. But how about Nebraska finishing the year ranked? If you finish 8-4 or better, you're ranked.
I'd actually go the other way and say I don't even think it'd be nice for Nebraska to be ranked in the top 25 this year. Keep Nebraska the hell away from the top 25 until they show me something on the field. Don't give me preseason hype and all this whatnot until Nebraska shows something on the field. And maybe this comes from the Husker PTSD within me, but no, I don't want Nebraska to be ranked in the top 25.
Prove it to me every weekend.
As Matt Rule said, they're a 5-7 team until they aren't.
Amen.
And right now they're a 5-7 football team. Why should a 5-7 football team? I know they did great in recruiting. I know there's a lot of people that are bullish on Nebraska, a lot more bullish than the markets have been today. But keep Nebraska the hell away from the top 25 until they show me something that proves they deserve to be a top 25 team. We haven't seen that. I don't think they should be a top 25 team based on projection and based on what people like Matt Rule.
I think your eye test will show that top 25 worthiness post-Colorado. Do you handle business on the road? Do you get out of Indiana, the state, alive this year? You have 2 road trips to Indiana. What's Rutgers do with you and their defense? That's pretty fascinating ball game with Schiano and his mad scientist defensive abilities, specifically in the secondary against a young quarterback. And then, you get to November after a intriguing October.
Yeah, I'll just say we can talk about Nebraska being in the top 25, as you said, once they have shown me something that proves they deserve to be considered for top 25, and I haven't seen that.
No, and you won't. You got to wait till UTEP and then Colorado and beyond. We'll check in tomorrow on Hail Varsity. We'll find you at 4. And give us a like and follow on YouTube, Hail Varsity, and Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Thanks for tuning in.